Well, hello 406 people, this is Dr. Keith Schubert, and this is going to be a lecture on quality programs and doing a quality job in engineering. Now, the term quality often is used kind of colloquially just to mean a good job, and we're going to be a little more precise on that. We're talking quality in an engineering sense using quality programs. In the 80s and 90s, these type of quality programs went under the title TQM, Total Quality Management. Now the popular terms are like Six Sigma design. There's specifics to each one. I'm going to try to hit some kind of generic ideas because undoubtedly by the time you hit it, some new idea is going to be down the line with some new name and so on. So rather than get too hung up on specifics inside programs, what we want to do, at least for here, is give you an overall idea of it. Now, most quality programs have at least 6 kind of goals or targets that you're trying to do. The first one that we want to do is we want to have a customer focus. Now, this one might seem maybe a little bit obvious almost, but obvious is not always done, unfortunately. Customer focus can be both internal and external customers. Internal customers are ones that in your company have required you to do something. Maybe in the production of a larger net product, you have to produce some smaller project in between, or some product along the line, or some portion of the product they are working on. So your job is not at that point the overall product, you have one portion of it. And therefore the one who has commissioned you to do that is your internal customer. You could also be doing a completely internal project. Maybe it's something that your company is going to use over and over again, and the company therefore wants you to develop it. Or in the case of some of the space programs, SpaceX or things of that sort, your product that you're actually doing, the overall company's external product is to sell space on one of their rockets. Internal products are building boosters or control systems or things of this sort. External customers are kind of obvious. They're the people outside who are paying you. Realize you also get paid by internal people. Transfer of funds from one department to another. So this is probably the biggest emphasis you're going to see, and rightly so. If you do not make your customer happy, your customer is not going to want to use you anymore. So customer focus is really big, and some of this is kind of obvious. How do you achieve it? Well, this is almost a circular statement, but you achieve customer focus by focusing on the customer. They really do have to be your kind of goal. And you want to make sure that you get to know them, become friendly with them, understand what their process is, what they're using it for, try to anticipate where their problems are going to be and give them ideas, but you don't want to oversell them. So you want to give them options and say, hey, these are your choices, and just have your design be flexible enough so that when down the line they go, oh, I really do need that, you're ready to take advantage of it. So this is a very big issue as it goes. Second one that we want is usually leadership or something like this, and personal responsibility. Personal response, or individual responsibility. Now, leadership and personal or individual responsibility says that, essentially, if I were to put in colloquial terms, let people do their job would be what I would say. You want everybody involved in the company. You want, people active. You want them able to do what they need to do. They need to have the resources, they need to have expectations put, and there need to be rewards set for those who do their job well, and ways of detecting people who are not doing their job. You want to make sure that you make people able to succeed. And the best leadership is the type of leadership that's going to allow each individual person to get their job done and gives them a direction that they're doing it in a useful point. So we want to make sure that that's kind of key to this, that people are able to do their job, they have the resources to do their job, and that's you know, they're kind of carried through. They know what's going to happen, and they get rewarded for it. Or commensurately, if they don't do it, they get their disadvantageous things coming in. Now, third thing we want to do is kind of more personal in this area. We need integrity. Alright, there's integrity in the process, integrity in the individual, integrity in the company as it goes. You know, we want this kind of to be a way of life that you go into it. Integrity means you're the same in every situation, that it's integrated across you. So, you know, we want it such that when you're working on something, this is who you are, this is what you do, and that, you know, that's going to carry through. So this is something that can't be, you can't just expect, you know, your employees to have it and not have management have it. You can't expect management to have it if you don't have it. And the overall company flavor is going to carry through from how you individually do this. Now note, different sections of companies typically do this differently. It's usually talked about as this is going to be some big monolithic block inside a corporation. It's not really true. Usually an individual manager sets a tone. So there are cases where it is kind of more wider stream, but usually within some area you will find some that have lots of integrity, and the groups are just on fire, and you know, they've got, you know, everybody's able to do their job well, and they're just hitting on all cylinders, and you got other groups that are just dying. Another one is you know, you want to basically enhance your communications, and so enhance communication. Whenever you have any group of people together, it is highly likely that people are not going to say everything that needs to be said. It won't be said clearly. You know, this happens from friendship to marriages, so it's pretty much across human existence, and so any part of a good quality program needs to enhance communication. You need to communicate with your customer well at the very beginning to make sure that you've got your customer's requirements down well, and you talk about functionally what they need to have done, and see if your idea meets their requirements and where might it go. Right? So there needs to be a lot of talk with your customer throughout the entire design process, particularly at the beginning to set the tone right, but throughout the process to make sure it's on track. But communication between groups is also very, very important. I used to, when I was an undergrad student myself and I was working some summer jobs, I worked for a company, and there was a engineer who was very experienced, had come back from retirement, and he talked to me about a program that he worked on for a big trucking company when he was an engineer. And this story always sits in my mind about communication and the fact that you can get feedback from anybody. And he was working on this big truck project. It was one of the first powered trucks that was on there, and they put on electric motors to tilt the cab forward so people could work on the engine to make it easier for them. You know, just everything, power windows, just everything you can imagine. And he was working on this late at night, pretty close to when it was going to go, and there was a janitor coming through the room, and you know, this engineer's name was Bob, and you know, he was showing this off to the janitor, and the janitor looked at it and goes, "Wow, that's really neat. What do you do if the power fails? How do you replace the battery?" Now, that nifty little electric motor to tilt the cab forward for the person so they didn't have to do any work themselves meant that the battery had to be working, or the engine had to be running, in order to jack the cab forward. But if your battery died and you can't get your engine started, you can't actually tilt the cab forward, and the motor will actually hold it shut. So now you're in deep trouble, and you have to cut through the side of the truck in order to be able to do this. So, you know, if he had not been talking to this person and didn't receive the feedback or communication well from him, they would have had a really, really expensive mistake. Don't ever think that you cannot learn something from anybody who's out there. Pride gets in the way, and this is true in a lot of cases. So make sure you're willing to receive feedback from anybody. You don't try to hide what you're working on. You don't protect your product by keeping it secret. You protect your product by broadcasting it. And it's much better to take blows early and get them fixed than to wait to the end and have them be a disastrous failure. So please, please make sure you are always talking to everybody. We want to avoid silly mistakes and utilize everything that we have available to us. And so that usually means knowledge of people around us. And there's a lot of knowledge in every different group that's out there. Point 5 usually comes down as some form of recognition and reward to employees that goes on, and what you want to do is find the best employees and keep them. Now, there are some complaints. If you put an overdue emphasis where just one person wins these things, then you're probably going to have a problem too. You don't just want one person coming out on top. So when we say employees, we're not just saying one individual over everybody else, although there are some times when one individual is the one who really is carrying the whole team. But more often than not, there are good teams out there. And when groups are working well, you want to reward that whole group. When individuals do great things, you want to reward those individuals. You don't want to make it something where they are fighting against each other, because if you make that type of a competitive thing, and there's spots where competition are wonderful, but this is not one of them. If you make a competition between people, they will start to de-enhance their communication. Right? They will start to hide up their stuff because they don't want other people using their basis to jump for other spots. If reward gets spread to everybody who helps, you might get a couple hangers on out there, but honestly, that's a small price to pay. It's much better to have this open communication and everybody happy and everybody wanting to help each other. It sets a very positive tone. It's a pleasant place to work. There's lots of information sharing. The products get done well, so it's a great spot to work and great products get designed. So when you do recognition and reward to employees, make sure you do not set up a competitive system. It's almost always disastrous. So, make sure when you do this, it is a system that rewards people for working together as a group. Because that is really where any decent sized project is going to happen. Even small projects, it is better to have a good functioning team, because everybody has something to contribute if you hired them well, and if they don't have something to contribute, you shouldn't have hired them in the first place. The sixth point that I would emphasize on here is to streamline your processes. Streamline processes. So streamline your processes. What you want to do is you don't want unnecessary steps. So you want to find something that is going to get the job done in the least number of steps, but will actually go through everything that needs to happen. You don't want to streamline things so much that there's nothing left of it. So streamlining is important, but make sure that while you're streamlining, you don't throw out key components that really happen. And in another video, I will talk about some of the basic kind of flows that go on here. But in general, what you want to do, most companies have all kinds of built-up red tape, and they institutionalize things that are unnecessary. So you want to streamline those out. There are some things which absolutely should happen. When you get to design reviews, your design review really should go in front of everybody, so that you have done this step, enhancing communication, so that you get lots of eyes looking on it. This is crucial to a lot of our engineering process, just to have a lot of people look at it. Somebody is going to find mistakes if you have enough people looking. If you only have a few people looking, you won't. So by all means streamline, but don't streamline things that are necessary to ensure quality, or don't remove, I guess I should say. Streamline, but don't remove the essentials. So and really that is built into the idea of streamlining itself. Streamlining a process doesn't mean get rid of it. It means get rid of unnecessary things that are just causing problems. Remove the stuff that causes turbulence. So make sure that as you're going through, these kind of key ideas are usually integral to whatever else. And then they might add in statistical sampling and all kinds of other stuff like that. That's the idea behind Six Sigma, but really these ideas become crucial as goals. Now, I've mentioned some of the ones already on how do you achieve these. Customer focus is the first one as it goes. A lot of these kind of naturally flow through, but really as a way of implementing customer focus implements customer focus. I mentioned that's kind of circular, but you know, it's also sometimes the obvious things that don't happen. Second thing you want is you want to get involvement. You want everybody in the organization working to support the goals. You don't want somebody who's being a spoiler or ruining things for you. You know, one spoiler can kill you in these type of things. So the next thing you want to do is to have metrics that are going to allow you to see what's going on and to measure the process as it's happening. Measurement of process is extremely important, and that's all metrics are, right? Metric system, it's a measurement system. So we want to put metrics in to measure our process. So whatever we're doing, we want to make sure it is measurable and that we can get an accurate idea of what's happening without being too intrusive. If you spend too much time getting a fancy metric, nobody's going to implement it. It'll be done in a poor manner, or it will so slow your people down they won't get any work done. So when you're designing systems and you're working on these overarching programs, make sure somebody can easily tell where you're at in the process and where things are slowing down. That will allow you to find the slow steps and streamline them. Next one we want is support. So this is from budget to planning. You know, if this could be specialists available to help you out. You know, there's at every point along the line you're going to have some problem that's going to come up and you're going to need something. You might need money, you might need equipment, you might need some help scheduling things, you might need some help with some more involved technical question. There's a lot of things that go on that's going to involve support. Now some of that is we need enhanced communication to do it, and this is kind of circular, but the company has to be willing to provide that support for it. If the company is willing to allocate the funds and time and these type of things to really let people do them, then they will be able to achieve the other goals. So, you know, there is company support, there is cost associated with this, but it's more expensive not to get the job done right and then to have to fix it later. This is one of those things that I often mention is the kind of 110-100 type of system. And this has been around for a long time, but basically it says if it's at the kind of inception of a project and you find a problem and you fix it, it costs you $1. If you wait until you're actually in your design thing, you're designing it, you're building it, those kind of stages that's early on, the late design, so this is kind of early design stages, this is kind of your late design stages, cost you $10. If you wait till it's out in the field or the very end of production, it's going to cost you $100. So the question is not do you want to spend the money, it's how early do you want to fix it, and therefore how much money do you want to spend. Fix it early, you spend $1. Wait a little while, 10. Wait longer, 100. The longer you wait, the more expensive that problem becomes. Fix the problem early. Sometimes these costs are so high, it kills the program. So this is not something you want to sit around on. Our fifth point is continuous improvement. No matter how well you do at any of these things, you are going to have to get better at it. Nobody is perfect right from the start. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a system of getting things better and better and better. This again is going to cost time, it's going to cost some effort. There's kind of a neat little saying that when I was going through the Northrop Grumman one, everybody always used to repeat, and it kind of became a moral to me on this one, which is doing it right costs, doing it wrong costs more. And really let that one sink in for a sec, because it's important to realize it's not a choice over spending or not spending. It's a choice over spending a little and getting a good product, or spending a lot to get a patched together kludge. So there are times when people just waste money. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that are actually necessary to do a good job. Staying on focus, getting something good. It costs money to do the project right. But it will cost you so much more if you don't do the project right. Now, to achieve these things, you need to set up a system of processes. I don't want to spend a lot of time here on processes, but this is really kind of what all these are aimed at. You're going to do the same process on each process that you go through. A process, if you think about it, is a little subsection of whatever you're going on. So I have a little process here. Right? Now that process has a boundary, right? And your process has boundaries too. There's inputs, there's outputs to your process. There's some section that you're in charge of. So you have people here who are suppliers to you and people who are your customers, right? Your inputs come from your suppliers, your outputs go to your customers. This is true whether or not, this is an internal or external customer, an internal or external supplier. You always have these boundaries that are on there. And now inside that, you're going to apply all of this. You want to make sure it's effective. You want to make sure it's efficient. You want to make sure that it's controlled, by which we mean that it's well documented and that. And these metrics and efficient, small, easy ones are crucial to do. In addition to being effective and efficient and controlled, we also want to be adaptable, something that we can change it a little bit or update it. Right? So we need to know, essentially, does it work? Right? That's effective. We need to know, is it producing this at a good or low price? That's efficient. We want to know, is it documented? Could it be taken over well? Are there metrics and the rest of it? That's controlled and adaptable. Is there ways that I can meet new requirements easily on this? Now, customer focus, if you've noticed, has been such a major issue to us, as I've been emphasizing it here. So I just like to talk a little bit over some things that you would want on here. When you're looking at this, you want to take a look and see on the product that they are asking for, does it meet their needs? Is it going to meet their future needs? Is it being met in a good way? And then there's the relationship that you form with them. Is it positive? Do they trust you? Is there a little bit of a friendship? Anybody you work with a while, you'll start to get to know them, and it'll become friendly. We've mentioned integrity before, but integrity, can you meet their requirements? Integrity in your process. Can I meet the requirements? What do you do if there's a problem? Are you going to let them know? When are you going to let them know? How are you going to get this fixed? The relationship means, do they trust you? Integrity kind of is hitting it, are you yourself trustworthy? Somebody can trust you and you're not trustworthy. Or the other way around. But you need to make sure that you build up a relationship so they do trust you, and then you need to be worthy of that trust that they give to you. You need to make sure you deliver what you say when you're going to say it at the price you say you're going to deliver it. On time, on budget, and useful to them. The delivery has to be there. And I've mentioned cost there, but it's worth mentioning again, expense. Got to make sure they're happy that they're getting good value. It should be such that at the end of this, everybody has done well and is happy with what's happened. Now, This is one of those cute, you'll see cute acronyms all over the place. PRIDE, right? Product, relationship, integrity, deliverables, and expense. So, you know, make sure that you take care of this. Now, the other one that I mentioned on here that's worth kind of some things is we talked a little bit about continuous improvement. And there's an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ain't broke, don't fix it. Now I'm probably going to get killed and hated for this, but there are times when that is the correct thing to do. Don't fix it. It's not all the time. It's actually fairly specialized when this is the case. But sometimes something is operating, there's no real advantage to fixing it up. And this is kind of more what I would say, the ain't broke, take it as a more general statement. You know, ain't broke means that it is already an efficient process. It is already well, you know, measured and everything else. You know, there's continuous improvement that goes on, but if it's working well, don't destroy something that is working well. Now, there are times when there's a brand new idea comes on, new technology, something is working well in its old system, you're going to want to at that point fix it anyway. So as much as this is kind of true as a generic don't rock the boat unless you have a good reason, new technology is a good reason to do this. You know, it's important to get this down, that you can improve things, even something that is non-broken, i.e. an efficient, functioning, good system. If it looks like in the next few years you're going to get passed by, there's something much better down the line that's coming up, you want to set it up. But make sure you don't transition too fast. Do the development, get it ready, switch it in at a good time. How do you make sure that you do continuous improvement? Well, in order to do it, you have to actively listen. Somebody who just listens is just sitting there and yep, it comes in, goes out the other ear. Actively listening, you're trying to elicit input from them. Sometimes people don't know what they want. Well, I shouldn't even say sometimes. Most of the times people don't know what they want. And it's when you ask questions that it brings up the things that are kind of under the surface that they had kind of skipped over and not put a lot of thought on. So if you're actively listening, you're involved in the conversation with them and helping them to kind of think through this, but make sure it's definitely their ideas coming out. You know, you're reading back to them to make sure you're clear. All these active listening techniques, you will tend to get better feedback, therefore you will know what needs to happen and you can do continuous improvement. The next step that we usually do is visualizing. You want to visualize the process so that you can imagine what you're making, how it'll be used, how it'll be misused. You know, why do people want it? How's it going to benefit them? You know, really think over what you're doing here. You know, imagine you're the one who's going to be using this one, and you know, what do you see yourself doing? Where's the problem? Try to put yourself in that person's place and really run through it. At that point, you know, you'll start to see where it's inefficient, where it's problematic, and it'll give you a good idea where the continuous improvement should happen. It's at the points where it is not efficient. You know, now there's another technique that we sometimes call the why technique. Now this is also somewhat annoying if you really want to bug somebody. But in essence, when you're trying to track down a failure or you're trying to find out where a problem is, ask yourself why at every stage. You know, there's this thing happened. Well, why did that thing happen? Well, this other thing went on here and did this. The car crashed. Why did the car crash? The brakes didn't work. Why didn't the brakes work? There was a leak in the brake hose. Why was there a leak in the brake hose? A rock got kicked up by our tires and hit that. Why did the rock get kicked up and hit the hose? Well, because, tires driving over will knock up rocks, but we didn't have anything to shield it, So you keep walking down these areas and try to find out why it happened. At a certain point, you'll see where the problem is, and you can, and a good way to solve it as it goes. Now, the why technique does kind of depend upon, the person thinking it. You've got to be open to where the whys lead you. Don't overstate your thing, but it's a good kind of drill down technique. The other one that's kind of useful for this, in addition to the why technique, is the contingency diagram. And what you would start off with is, you make a little circle, which is a car crash. This is your problem. And then you just put all these different contingencies of basically what can happen on little arrows coming out to the side, and so, one of this thing could be like brake failure. And then off of this, essentially you want to, like the why technique, you want to see what's going to happen, and you want to say, what's going to, what should I do in these cases? How do I handle these? And, those type of areas. So these type of contingency diagrams can let you kind of drill down in a specific way of what's going to go on with them. So that's, another way to find out where new features need to be and things of that sort. This is kind of a quick overview for the engineer side. Now, many of you, after you've been in the industry for a while, will probably take over in management. So I just want to give a couple of my feedbacks as somebody who did work in industry for a while, what I would like from a good manager, and when I've had to lead people, what are efficient on this. Cute little sayings are kind of fun and easy to remember, and this is one that kind of really stuck in my mind whenever I have to run people, which is that training, and this is the big expense because you're trying to make sure your people are well equipped. Most people don't like to spend money on training. Training is a non-recurring overhead expense. Alright, so let me kind of explain what's going on here. Right, your people need training on there. If you train them, it's a one-time deal, so it's non-recurring, and it's an overhead expense. You can't bill it to your customer. It's a cost of doing business, so it goes into a pot of money called overhead. That is a somewhat limited thing. You are trying to trim that down. There's a lot of pressure to eliminate training, which cuts out overhead. There's the backside of this, though. Ignorance is a recurring direct charge. Now, what that means is ignorance is going to keep happening. If you don't train them, they're still going to be untrained as the project goes on. They're going to be making mistakes. They're going to keep making mistakes, and it's going to directly charge every one of your things. Your costs are going to go up. You're going to lose customers. You're going to go bankrupt. So while training does have a cost to it, ignorance, failing to train your people, has an even bigger cost. So, just think wisely before you skip over your training budgets. So what should you do to run a project? First off, give them the big picture. Right. So people who know how this thing is working, where it's working, what they're going to be doing with it, are able to do a better job for you. So, there's an awful lot that's part of that whole communication thing. Make sure your people understand what's going on. Number two, you want to actively solicit new ideas. So make sure that you get as much. You're asking people. People are afraid to come up with new ideas. They're afraid they're going to get shot down. They're afraid people will be mad at them. So you have to really kind of pull it out of people. But those new ideas are sometimes the best ones and really help you out. You want to open up those communication things, so you want to encourage the team members, your team, to talk directly. I'm going to leave this open. It's often mentioned talk directly with customer, but it's really with suppliers too. You want to empower your people to be able to talk to who they need to talk to get their job done. If you try to control the information flow, it may make you think you have power, but all you have the power to do is to destroy your own project. So make sure you have open communication, train them, pair them up with more skilled people, let them talk to each other, train them on how you want them to talk to them. You can go along with them to help them if they're a novice. Don't just push people in the deep end and expect them to talk. You need to help them do this, but you want to make sure people have the power to talk to who they need to without going through 20 levels of management. This is part of that streamlining process. Next thing we want to do is we want to have a flow chart available to them. Flow chart their work process, help them to look for ways to improve it. It's a good thing, and I put this as a careful spot. You don't always want to improve it every time. I have to say this very carefully. You want a flow chart, you do want to improve, but if you have a deliverable in a week, wait till the deliverable's done to change your process flow and everything else. You definitely want people knowing what's going on. You definitely want to be improving, but continuous improvement should be punctuated. So I'll put that little caveat on there. Definitely improve. Definitely be looking for opportunities to improve, and then pick the right time. There are good times to improve, and there are times when it's just going to create a nightmare. So, do it at smart times. Anytime you do a major change, you're going to cause your team to kind of break up. This is one of the things the Boy Scouts often emphasize pretty heavily as it goes on, and I've gone through their management training thing as well for it. And they have this kind of general flow that goes on here. That's storming, norming, performing, norming, performing. Oh, sorry. I'm missing one of them. Well, this kind of happens. So, anyway, the idea that goes on with each of these, when you first start a new change, the whole thing starts just breaking up, and you do a major change, everybody's got a new position, people are vying and things like that, so the whole system, starts to go apart. And then you go into a stage where people are starting to kind of align up. After they've gone through the kind of fighting, people start aligning up, they start getting better and better, and you'll go through these kind of processes where people start getting the same goals, they start figuring out their new spot, and then they'll hit the point where they're really working well. So, you want to make sure that you hit this as it goes, and if you do your improvement, even a good improvement, you got to realize you're going to disrupt your team for a little while. So make sure you choose your time wisely when this happens. Another one that you want to do as you're going through here is model what you are asking for. Model the high standards in your work, and that you're going to reward them. Encourage them when they succeed. Don't take it out on them when they lose. You're supposed to be kind of a shelter to them. So you want to encourage them to win. You know, you want to put definite motivators for succeeding, and you want to make it look like it's realistic and everybody has stake in this. You know, final thing I would say is to kind of seek the best. So in any team, you're going to have some kind of all-stars, and you're going to have some real solid people. And for each one of them, you want to grow the people in your team. You want to make sure you really help the best people in your team become super. You want to help your average person be able to become that solid team player who's going to work it out. Sometimes people get scared by this type of a process as it goes in. So I would like to encourage you, don't be scared. You know, if your people grow, if your people do well, you do well. You know, managers with great teams rise up the ladder. Managers with lousy teams usually don't. So definitely make sure you spend some time, you know, seeking out the best. So these are kind of my inputs to you. I hope they are helpful and go along. I've got more stuff inside on the Keith on Engineering Design kind of notes online. You know, a lot of this is in there as well, and there's some more topics. So please make sure to take a look through it, and we'll go through and do some ideas inside class to bring this out. So hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.